Good evening. We're going to start. Thank you for being patient. I am Council President Mally Rosado. I want to call to order the Committee of the Whole to discuss the town and city clerk vacancy. I would like to introduce you to the council members, starting with my far right is Councilwoman Shirley Surgeon, Councilman Sanchez, Councilman LeBron, Councilman Majority Leader T.J. Clark was here, and to my far left, Councilman Mixtum, Councilwoman Bermudez, and Councilman John Gale. Thank you for coming all tonight. We will start with the first item on the agenda with a resolution from Majority Leader T.J. Clark, Councilman LeBron, and Councilwoman Shirley Surgeon, appointing Noel F. McGregor to serve as Hartford Town and City Clerk for an indefinite term in accordance with the Charter, Municipal Code, and all applicable laws of the state of Connecticut. Mr. McGregor, could you please come to the table, please? Hello, Mr. McGregor. Good evening. Do you have an opening statement?
Good evening, Honorable Council people, Madam Chair, Madam President. It's good to be here this evening. I once sat in one of these seats, so I know the awesome responsibility that you have and to ensure that the city of Hartford receives the best possible service. One of the reasons why I am interested in this position is because I believe in service. I believe that the citizens need to be served to the best of the department's abilities. I bring a wealth of experience. I've been a council person. I've been involved in the Democratic Party as a chairman. I've been a business owner, and I've been an employee, so I am well aware of the challenges. Just several days ago, I performed a wedding, and I came to City Hall to turn in the license, and on my way out, a woman came in looking for a notary. I directed her to the town clerk's office. As I was going back down the elevator, she got on the elevator very disappointed that she was not able to have her documents notarized. When citizens take the time to come from their homes to City Hall for service and not be served, it's a blight on all of us. I believe that we should be accommodating to our citizens and that we should represent them to the best of our abilities and make sure that when they come for service that they are served. Because of that, I felt that I knew I wanted to do this because I believe in full service. Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Mr. McGregor, thank you for your time here today. Thank you for expressing your, thanks, Nick. Thank you for expressing your interest in the clerk's position. Can you just let us know? Thank you. Can you just let us know what actually qualifies you, in your words, to be appointed as the next town and city clerk for the city of Hartford?
Well, first and foremost, I have participated in city government as an elected official, and I know the relationship between the town clerk and the city departments. I spent 25 years in the City of Hartford Police Department, where I was a hostage negotiator for 22 years. I was a diversity trainer. I was a peer counselor, among other things, and I've done pre-employment background investigation. I've dealt with outside departments as liaison, so I have a wealth of experience. Besides that, I've been a business owner. I've owned a restaurant, I've owned a private investigation company, and I'm still a licensed private investigator. I also am the head elder of the Great Seventh-day Adventist Church, where I am the director of our community service. We have a food pantry where I serve over 300 residents a week, and I've developed that from scratch, from the back of my van to where we're the largest pantry in Greater Hartford and Talon counties, serving over 500,000 pounds of food a year. Besides that, my managerial skills have been established through the businesses that I've run, training employees in how to do their job and do it professionally, and developing them so that they are professionals in all aspects of their lives.
Thank you, sir. Another question. Oftentimes I've heard, when I was on the campaign trail, many of us have heard the fact that there are people in the community that are not familiar with the city departments and actual functionalities of the city departments. What would you do if you were appointed as the next town and city clerk to bring the town and city clerk's office into the community?
Well, first of all, the website needs updating badly. The information there is antiquated. You need to be able to connect the website to the departments and to the commissions, and make sure that the information flows both ways. Have you ever been on the website and you pull up the committees and the commissions and you scroll down? There's people who have not been, whose terms have expired from all the way back in 2010. You need to have something that is functional where you can access information and make it flow both ways. The town clerk is very essential because information flows. If it's only going one way, it's not working properly.
Thank you, sir. I yield the balance of my time.
So we're going to the right? Okay. So piggybacking off the website, we've had multiple conversations with community folks, and folks have come here and talked about the website specifically in terms of the navigation. So what would you do in terms of what kind of technological advances would you do to improve the website to make it forward and eliminate access issues that the community has stated before?
Well, first and foremost, I'm not a techie. I don't know the technical aspects of that, but my suggestions would be to incorporate the important information that our citizens are looking for. Trying to find the right committees, information, licenses, and processes that you need to find that access through the town clerk's office is very essential, that it's easily found on your website.
Great. I'm glad you said the whole techie thing, because I personally am not a techie. Maybe I'm a semi-techie. But I think folks in our community, there seems to be an internet divide, or divide in terms of access and accessing website and website information. It's kind of a tale of two halves in terms of being able to navigate it. So assuming that someone isn't techie, right, how can we, or what would you propose in terms of a lot of the language is legalese? And so how do we make that more user-friendly so that folks can access it and understand what they're saying? Because, you know, it's all like kind of lawyer language.
Well, I can't really define what, you know, the legalese problem would be, but I believe in simple language on the website that people can access. We have people who have various degrees of education and sophistication, but we have to make it as plain as possible. I think the main thing is that the information is easily accessed, because if you can't access it properly, then you have a problem.
I still have time? Okay, great. And lastly, can you, the town and city clerk's office is one that really provides the baseline and the foundation for ethics. Can you provide an example where ethics were tested in your personal life?
I was tested all my life. I was a police officer, and I had to be honest and truthful in testimony. As a private investigator, if I am not truthful and honest, then my license is in jeopardy. So I would say my whole life, as an ordained elder in the church, my whole life is based on truth.
Thank you. I think I had a couple extra minutes time, so I cede my time to the next council person.
Evening.
Good evening.
And this goes for everyone that's interested in the position. Thank you for your interest. This is a city clerk position. I would call it a very powerful position. You swear in officers, you swear in firefighters, councilmen, mayors, and so forth, and the treasurer. So you mentioned that you have an extended amount of experience here in the city. How many years would you say you have total with the city?
Total, if you count the years that I did investigation for the Civilian Police Review Board, about 35.
35 years?
Yeah, some of them overlap, so.
Okay. Would you say that you have the managerial skills and administrative skills to run a city clerk's office?
Yes, I do.
And would you say, or let me rephrase that, what are your plans for if you were to be appointed? What would your plans be for the staff as far as training, classes, cross-training, et cetera?
I believe in all of those things that you said, but let me expound a little bit more. First of all, I'm a person who will roll up my sleeves and get down in the trenches. I believe in working alongside staff, not to let the staff do all the work. I believe that training is essential, that we need to cross-train, as you said.
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I believe in all of that you just said. I believe cross-training is essential to the productivity of the office, that everyone should be cross-trained. When there's illnesses or there is crisis in the office, you don't want someone there who doesn't know what the next person is doing. I know that in city government and a lot of places, employees seem to want to protect their turf because they're afraid, but I will make sure that the staff understands that it's a team effort. I was part of a paramilitary organization for 25 years. I know that training is very important, that we have orders and understand that there is a way about doing business that we need to adhere to so that we can serve the public properly.
As you know, whoever is appointed will be fulfilling the role of Registrar of Vital Statistics as well. What is your understanding of confidentiality of the records?
It's very important. Confidentiality, like I said, this is things I've done all my life as in law enforcement and as a private investigator. Confidentiality is important, and we must make sure that that is adhered to by all of the staff, that everyone knows how important it is, and that we take seriously our role as caretakers of vital records.
Do you have any experience in grant writing?
No, I do not.
That's it.
I only have one question. The city charter does not call for the town clerk to be a certified town clerk, but there is a town clerk association in the state of Connecticut. Would you consider yourself getting certified and having your staff be certified with the town clerk association?
I've already looked into that. The certification takes 2.5 years. It's class in May and December, and in 5 modules. I would definitely, the first thing on the agenda is to make sure that I myself are starting the process of being certified. I think it's very important that we be part of the Town Clerks Association. There's 3 associations. There's the Connecticut Town Clerks Association, the New England, and the International, I believe. And I would like to be part of at least the Connecticut and the New England Town Clerks Association. I think it's very important for legislative purposes and for training and for updates on all of the new developments in the industry. If you're not part of it, you're missing out on the professional information that will flow back and forth.
Thank you, through you, Council President. Good evening. I have two
Good evening.
questions. So in this department and also other departments in the city, there's been a high turnover rate. Folks that had a long-term knowledge of the town clerk office, who worked there for many years, have left. What would you do, if selected for this role, what would you do to address the high turnover rate? And then the second question has to do with continuity. We went through a committee of the whole meeting where we interviewed, for instance, the now new police chief, and the issue of continuity was a question that was brought forth by the residents and others. And so what do you consider in terms of those out there who are saying, well, we need continuity in the office? So those are the two questions, the high turnover rate and the continuity question.
Okay, as far as addressing the high turnover rate, I think that when you have a high turnover rate, it's a symptom of something else happening, that you need to get under the hood, look and see what's happening, why people are leaving. As far as continuity is okay if it's moving forward. And I mean moving forward and advancing the office. If it's not advancing the office, making it more professional, then continuity, and if I'm understanding it correctly, is not necessarily a good thing. You need to have change if it's going to improve the services.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McGregor, you're a retiree from the city of Hartford.
Yes.
And you collect a pension.
Yes.
Now, there's the Hartford law does indicate that when a retiree, a pensioner, is hired back in another job, the city can make a cut to their pay. But I understand from, not directly from Corp Counsel, but I spoke to someone else who had spoken to Corporation Counsel, that doesn't apply to this position. And I didn't get to speak to Corporation Counsel myself. So supposing it doesn't apply, would you be, supposing, in other words, that you could theoretically both get your full pension and your full clerk pay, would you be willing to take a cut to even that out?
That's very difficult for me to answer on the fly like this. Let me explain. When I retired from the City of Hartford Police Department, I retired on a disability pension. I was injured in the line of duty near the end of my career, and it prohibited me from going into law enforcement again. So my hands were tied with that, you know, so I had to find other ways to make income. That's why I started my own business. To give up a disability pension at this stage, it would be very big sacrifice.
Let me put the question another way. That's a fair point. And I don't mean to suggest that you're not entitled to your pension in any way. Don't get me wrong. Would you be willing to, and I don't know, you don't have to tell us what your pension is, but would you be willing to take a cut in the clerk's pay equal to your pension? So you're earning clerk's wages from the city, but it just works out that way. You follow me?
I hate to answer that without researching a little bit more. I'm reluctant to say yes at this point because I don't have one of those big police pensions. It's not. I'm reluctant to commit to that right now.
Okay. I have time, yes. One more question, more germane to what the clerk does. City council meetings are filmed, as you know, and then those get uploaded but onto the internet. But there's, you know, these meetings can run, as you surely know, a long time and cover a lot of issues, and there's no index, there's no way to find your way for the ordinary resident. By the same token, if someone is hard of hearing, or if they are not real strong with their English, or they speak one of the other languages that we speak in Hartford, there's really no point of access for them to city government. So my question is, what steps would you take as clerk to improve access in various ways, both linguistically and otherwise?
Well, first and foremost, I would need to understand the technology that's being used now and see where we can improve it. Was it through special equipment or through translators, or, you know, or just better navigating through the recordings, giving them people a table of contents maybe, or let them know what the issues are. And that goes back to the website also. If you have that information, that people would know what item is being discussed, and they easy access it and easy access the results. They may not even have to go to public access to find it.
Perfect timing, thank you.
Councilman Gale?
Thank you. Mr. McGregor, I want to just pick up on what Councilman Mictum was discussing with you and see what your understanding is. So, and I'll just restate it based on my understanding. When we had Chief Thode come before us, it was my understanding that because Chief Thode is collecting a pension from the Hartford Police Department, for him to accept the job now as police chief, he would be required to take half pay. And so, in some respects, the city's getting a benefit here. We're only paying half a salary. I'm getting a full-time police chief. I'm wondering, with respect to you, sir, I understand that you also have a pension from the police department. My question is what your understanding is of your ability, should you be nominated as the, appointed as the town clerk. Are you expecting that you will get the full town clerk salary, or are you expecting that your salary as town clerk will also be cut in half?
Well, I haven't had that discussion directly with anyone concerning that. I did contact the treasurer to find out what were the options, and I believe when you go into another pension fund, it's not allowed that you can collect two pensions or collect a pension. And I would forego the pension part of the benefits from the city. I would not accept any benefits from the city as far as pension.
So that I'm clear and everybody's clear, if that's the case, you would accept the full salary of the town clerk, but you would not be taking a pension during the years when you're serving as town clerk.
No, I would not go into the city pension fund, whereas on my end of my service as a town clerk, that I would collect a pension for that also. I will not go into go into the city pension fund.
I'm misunderstanding. So you're saying your service as town clerk would not create a second pension fund?
Yes, sir.
All right, so last question in that line then. So I understand you're committed to not earning a second pension from the city of Hartford, if you will.
Yes, that's true.
If it turns out that we got a legal opinion that said that your salary would be, in order to be the town clerk, your salary would be half of the town clerk's salary, are you still willing to be the town clerk of the city of Hartford, sir?
Well, sir, if it would have to be more than half, because my pension is not that. My pension wasn't like Chief Thode's $120,000. My pension is a lot smaller, and so we would negotiate that and then talk about it. But if you see the numbers, it's not that much.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. McGregor, could you tell me, in your personal or professional experience, in the last 5 years, what would you say has prepared you the most for the responsibilities of the town and city clerk?
You said the last 5 years, but I say my whole career. But the last 5 years is my responsibility at my church. As the head elder, I'm responsible for most of the day-to-day operation. In the Seventh-day Adventist Church, we have pastors who will pastor several churches, so the day-to-day operation responsibility falls on the elders. I am the head elder, so that has helped me to prepare managing a church of 150 to 70 parishioners, managing the food pantry, which a lot of the volunteers are here today. I thank them, of different backgrounds, managing them all into a cohesive unit to serve the citizens in the greater Hartford area.
Okay. And let's say you were appointed to town clerk. What would be your 3 goals within your first 30 days?
First 30 days is to begin the process of modernizing the office as far as information sharing. That information begins to flow both ways, and especially information coming from this body to the community. Look at any additional revenue streams about how we do business. Can we increase, fees from licenses and so forth? And to begin the transition into a professional staff where we look at the different trainings that are needed to ensure that the staff is upgraded and working at the most professional level that they can.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Mr. McGregor?
Motion to discharge to the next council meeting. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
We will finish with the next item, with the second item on the agenda, which is other business. We will now start the second item with the first candidate on the list to address the council, beginning with Billy C. Is it Scrusy?
Screws. Sounds like juice.
Oh, hi, how are you?
Good, thank you.
And do you have an opening statement that you'd like to share with council?
Yes, I do. I was born, bred, and raised here in the city of Hartford. I love the city of Hartford, and I've had the opportunity to work here in the city of Hartford. And I'd like to just also share, too, that I knew the former town and city clerk, which was, of course, John Bazzano, along with Dan Carey. And I had an opportunity as a press secretary to work very closely with him on some inaugural events, some swearing-ins, also just coordinating those special events that were here at City Hall. And I also have experience in public access as well. So I think that I would be a very good candidate for this position, and look forward to hopefully moving forward in this process if selected.
Thank you. Excuse me for a minute. Can we have the volume on the microphone a little bit higher, please? Can you just speak into it right now?
Absolutely. Oh,
thank you.
Much louder.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just to remind each council member that you have 4 minutes for your questions, and I will start with Councilman Clark.
Thank you, Madam President. Through you, Ms. Groos, thank you for your time and your willingness to be interviewed by the council for the position of town and city clerk. I'll ask you these same set of questions that I have prepared for all the candidates. What qualifies you for the position of town and city clerk?
Well, I shared some of that in my opening statement, but I have worked in government for a very long time. So I've worked on the state level in very key positions as a communications officer, a communications specialist in the commissioner's office. So I've worked for the State Department of Social Services. I've also worked for the State Department of Public Health. And I am very comfortable working with I've always dealt with constituents in some way, shape, or form. So politics has always been, I guess I could say, near and dear to me. We know, irrespective of politics overall, what's important to me is that the department runs efficiently and effectively. And customer service is key to me. You know, when we think about government, sometimes we think that we can lapse off in that arena, thinking that just because it is government, it's okay. It isn't okay. The professionalism always needs to be top-notch.
Thank you. And my second question. As we know, there are many residents in the city of Hartford that are not familiar with the city departments and functionalities of city departments. And if you were to be appointed the next town and city clerk, what would you do to bring the town and city clerk's office into the community?
Well, as you know, there are 17 neighborhoods in the city of Hartford, and I think it's always still important to have your pulse on what's going on in those respective neighborhoods and what's important to them. Also, too, you know, we were talking a little bit about the department, and we were talking about the website and how it needs to be improved upon. But I think what's most important is, you know, it's easy to explain certain statutes and you know, the various issuance of licenses, but I think you need to really describe a situation that makes it more simply understood, if you will. I think sometimes people get too caught up in the number and the name of the statute versus what the purpose of the statute actually is.
Thank you.
Councilman LeBron?
So going back to your statement, thank you again for coming in, through you, Madam Chair. So you just recently, you just said in terms of accessing and people understanding. So what would you do specifically when folks read? Sometimes it reads as legalese, and folks, you know, pretend like they know everything that's there, and you really need like a degree in law to kind of figure it all out. And so what would you do specifically to make it more user-friendly, both on the website and then hypothetically how you would bring that to the community?
I like to look at it as a case study. So, for example, I mean, I think it really could be a little testimonial. So if you're in this situation, how, you know, here's the problem, and this may be the result, and maybe this is how this statute can help you in handling that particular situation. I call it testimonials as well, you know, as people of faith. You know, it's easy to just describe what that might look like and how to handle it best.
And so specifically, have you looked at the website and the parts that are responsible to the town and city clerk?
Well, I have looked at the website, and I'm in agreement with some of the information is definitely older information, and it really would need some improvements. And so it would be necessary to just really take a look and maybe even sit down with someone who can assist in improving upon that.
Are there any, when you looked at the website, any specific advances that you would make, like high level?
I'm very visual. Okay. So for me, I would probably start with the design of how the information is disseminated. on the website to really give it a really good, clean, new look. And basically what I just shared with you in regards to the testimonials, the neighborhoods, and different situations that might have occurred, maybe even in a neighborhood. You don't necessarily, we realize our information is public, but we don't necessarily need to name names, but we could even identify a particular situation and how best, as I said, to handle it.
Thank you. And then the last question is, can you, the Town and City Clerk Office is really the foundation and the, you know, for ethics. And so can you provide an example of how your ethics were tested?
Actually, when I worked here as a press secretary, in 2003, character, ethics, a lot of things were questioned. I think most of you might remember the Greenwood Nursing Home fire in 2003. And I remember physically being in this room every day for 2 weeks, announcing along with police and fire officials the death of one of the folks at the hospital who was in the nursing home. As you know, 16 people passed away in that fire. So just coordinating that effort and bringing people together and also showing compassion for the death of those individuals was very trying. So I think we had to come together as a community. It was unfortunate what had occurred due to the sprinkling, the sprinkler systems were antiquated. And so, you know, again, we know that that will never happen again just based on, on how they were killed, unfortunately, and it was due to a young woman who was admitted there who actually had mental issues. So again, you start questioning your mortality and how to just handle things moving forward in your faith.
Thank you.
Councilman Sanchez?
Thank you. And thank you for being here, Mrs. Cruz. My first question, what is your knowledge of the records retention schedule?
I don't have a lot of information on that as of yet as far as the retention schedule, but I am familiar with the various maintaining of the various records that are, you know, in that department.
Okay, so
there is a learning curve, absolutely,
right,
on some things.
Are you aware of the posting regulations for agendas and minutes?
The official minutes that have to be written, yes.
Yes, okay. And what is your experience in that?
Other than just recording them, that's what I'm familiar with.
Okay. Do you have any grant writing experience?
I do. Most of the positions that I've had to write grants for.
All right. And my question that I asked previous, what will you do to improve the staffing's knowledge and giving them classes or giving them an opportunity for newer education or cross-training?
I think what's most important is you need to sit down to have some one-on-ones with your staff, first and foremost. Also, you need them to understand that, you know, we're in this together. It's a team effort, and also, too, even being the leader, I'm a team player. So I would focus on also, you know, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are. Maybe they have some issues that they would like to share. Just put it all on the table and go from there and see what we can change and what clearly, as you know, this is government, and there may be some things that we can't change right away. But, you know, just sending someone to training, cross-training, I don't think that's the first step. I think, again, you've got a new person coming in, and they've got to learn how to work with the staff accordingly and get them up to speed, and also me as well.
Thank you.
Councilman Surgeon?
I only have one question. Good evening.
Good evening.
The state of Connecticut have a town clerk association that provides training. Our city charter does not call for our town clerk to be a certified town clerk. It does add a benefit to that position, not financially, but just being trained throughout the entire state. So would you commit to becoming a certified town clerk? Should you be chosen?
Yes, I'm not unopposed to it. I don't know a lot about it, so I would like to review that, but no, I'm not unopposed to doing so. You're welcome. Thank you.
Councilwoman Bermudez?
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
I have the two questions, and this is in reference to, again, innovation and continuity, high turnover rate and continuity. So we've had high turnover rates in many departments, this being one of them in the town clerk's office. What would you do to change that, to help that, so that we don't have a high turnover rate? And what would you say to those who, whether it's members of the public or the overall community, saying it's good to have continuity in an office because it's always helpful to be able to create unity? So if you could speak to that, and then I have an additional third question.
In regards to the high turnover rate, I'd like to probably know why. I mean, is it due to morale? Is it due to retirements? What is it specifically? So, you know, we might really have to look at the numbers to assess why. Again, I think we still need to be results, you know, driven, if you will, and find out if there are some approaches that we can take to improve upon that. So again, it would require a little research just to see, you know, where we're at with that, and, you know, maybe there's a certain percentage that we want to get to increase, reduce, excuse me, the high turnover rate. And in regards to continuity, I think it's very important in most things. We are creatures of habit, but it is important to be consistent. So I think that goes back to really taking a look and assessing a lot of our processes to see whether or not they aren't as overwhelming or difficult, because the world that we live in now, especially when I think about technology, is folks don't have a lot of patience anymore, because we're used to immediate satisfaction and access to information. And as we know, information isn't always, you know, for example, we all Google, right? And when we Google, we assume that that's truth. And that isn't always truth. It still requires a need to do a little bit more research in order to get to the answer that makes most sense.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I had one additional question. In the last last year, how have you utilized the town clerk's office, or come in contact with the town clerk's office?
I had a housing issue that I had to deal with, and so I actually had to speak with someone. It was in regards to a tenant issue, and I do believe that the customer service was there, and they were able to answer and respond to my question accordingly. So I have no complaints being on the other side as a resident.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Mixton?
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm going to try to ask you roughly the same question I asked Mr. McGregor. City council meetings are filmed and they're uploaded to the internet, but they're hard to navigate. I would say impossible if one is hard of hearing or if one doesn't speak English. And so I would ask, what steps would you take to make not just the meetings here, but the operation of government, the things that we council members do, to make those really accessible to the residents beyond making sure the doors are open and the lights are on?
Well, especially if we're dealing with hard of hearing or individuals who may be deaf, I think I'd probably even reach out to the American School for the Deaf for them to hopefully be here to assist with that. As you know, as far as technology is concerned now, we do have closed caption. I don't know specifically, what public access might have in place now for something like that, but that's clearly something that we could explore.
And going along those lines, something that I definitely discovered when I was recently running for office and that I still see is that I think most people in this city aren't aware of what the city does, what the council does, what services are available. Now, you spoke a lot to the website, but I wonder if you have any other ideas for how the clerk's office could really disseminate information about what's going on in this building and really reach a lot of folks, including people who may just not know to look on the website or not have internet access.
That's a hard question to answer at this point without just doing a little research on that, to be quite candid. As I sit here and you being council members, I would even sit down with all of you individually to find out what your needs and what your platform and your interests are, and I think that's a way to connect with community so they would know you better. Again, it's not about, we know that that office is responsible for records in regards to elections and primaries and all that great stuff. But of course, when the election is over and you're physically sitting here in office, how do you still reach your constituents? And it may require, you to do some things that you did to get elected. So I think it's important to always, stay connected, if you will, to the residents. And again, as I said before, it always amazes me about the city of Hartford that there are 17 neighborhoods in the city of Hartford. So there's a lot to do, and there's a lot of work to still continue to do.
Thank you. I think that's it for me.
Thank you.
Councilman Gale?
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Cruz.
Good evening.
The town clerk's office is one of many departments in the city of Hartford, and yearly the city puts together a budget, and the town clerk, like every other department, is responsible for putting together the budget of the town clerk's office. The town clerk also has a staff that includes, like you had mentioned to of it here earlier, besides the folks working in land records and taking over the counter, you also are responsible for vital statistics. And so, as a head of a department, you would have some responsibility for both hiring and for firing. So I'm wondering if you can speak to us about your very specific experiences, if any, in both developing a budget for a department like this and managing the experiences you may have in the hiring and firing.
Well, I've had experiences in both. As far as a budget is concerned, in my current position and former positions, and I have had to let some people go just based on what the needs were of a particular area within a specific department. As you know, it's always slicing and dicing and still trying to maintain and keep things moving along accordingly. Sometimes you have to you might have to, a person might be full-time and you might have to reduce their hours. I've had to do that on several occasions. Currently, I do have a large staff, and when you're working with youth, you definitely need to have people there to handle and maintain, the young people going forward. So I have had experience managing a budget.
Thank you. Second question, You mentioned in answer to an earlier question that you had experience in grant writing. So I'm wondering if you can tell us what's been your most successful grant that you've applied for to date.
Well, I've worked with the Travelers and some other, some churches and some other organizations to secure monies for various programs in my current position that focus on youth. College tours, meals for young people on a daily basis. Also even scholarship money. So I've had the opportunity to work with the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving as well. I've done some training with them as well to figure out and improve upon my skills to be able to secure a grant. So I'm familiar in that arena, and also too, I had the ability to establish relationships with folks to get things done.
Thank you. And thank
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Good, good.
Good.
So, let's see here. Let's say you're named town clerk and it's 12 o'clock in the afternoon. You have two Spanish-speaking persons that work for you and they both take lunch at 12. They'll be back at 12:30. Someone comes in on their lunch hour at 12 o'clock and they need to speak with someone who speaks Spanish. How would you handle that situation?
Well,
And the person can't wait until 12:30 that your staff comes back. How would you handle that
no,
situation?
I do understand. Believe it or not, I was in a situation such as that, and I actually knew someone else in another department who spoke Spanish. So I was able to actually bring them over and say, hey, can you assist me with this? And they were very accommodating to do so. You know, in some languages, there's some words that you can pick up if you're not, you know, if you don't know the language. But I think there's still opportunity from a customer service standpoint to still work with that person, and if necessary, I may have to call them back or you know, have someone speak with them when they return, when the other person returns. And I'm not just saying just putting them on hold. Please understand what I'm saying. But again, there is a way to interact with a person to explain a situation without it being reactive.
Okay. Now, let's talk about management skills. So, what would be your 3 priorities if you were elected town clerk in your first 30 days?
The first one, as I mentioned before, would be to actually sit down with staff. Okay. To really get a real sense of who they are and what they do. So that's key. The second one is to probably, as I said before, it may even be sitting down with you, but also too, what's key for me is to really look at the processes that are currently in place. And, you know, I usually have what we call maybe a wish list. So, you know, if there's, or even a to-do list, if you will, but usually there might be 10 things on it, but I get to 3, but those might be my priorities. So I'd like to just look at what I can change in 30 days that would really make a vast improvement on how work is processed and done effectively and efficiently in that department.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Romilla Crump, is she here? Romilla? Excuse me? Romilla Trump? Triumph? Is she here? Okay. Raul De Jesus. Yeah, because she's not here. Good evening, Mr. De Jesus.
Good evening.
And do you have an opening statement for council?
I do.
The floor is
So
yours.
thank you so very much for having me tonight. I am very excited to be here, so if I get a little loud, please don't mind it. I probably don't need the microphone. I wish I wasn't sitting down. I was standing, moving around. But, you know, I am pretty much born and raised and still living in this area. I remember walking into those gold doors as an intern. What happened after that is what you see here today. I never left those doors in some way, somehow, even though I may not have an official title. I have been encouraging the youth, helping out council members. Many of you guys do reach out to me for help and assistance. I'm always there. Mayor sometimes calls out for assistance. I still work with department heads, and it is because I build relationships. And if there was something that I learned from that internship, I was supposed to be here for about a month. And because of my hard work at the Constituent Service Center and downstairs, making sure that later gave birth to 311, making sure that customers were being heard. I remember Susan McMullen coming downstairs and saying, hey, listen, they're giving complaints about Raul because there's no calls going to the departments. You know why? Because for the first time, they can actually talk to somebody. Hey, how you doing? This is Raul de Jesus. How can I help you? Oh, I just want to know what's my trash day. Oh, that's Wednesday. Oh, I've been trying this for weeks to find out. Nobody picks up the phone. Eventually, sitting down with Susan McMullen, we said, you know what, we have to innovate. We have to do something different. Let's do the 311. Is it perfect? Now, it isn't, but it gives birth to an idea of a young man here who was here still in his junior year in high school that was able to ignite and bring some fresh energy into the city, and that's what we need. You know, for a long time, the town clerk's office has been a retirement center. Well, guess what? The town clerk needs to be a center of innovation. We need to move the city forward. As the legislative branch, it's very difficult for you to do any work without impeding with the executive branch. They run all the departments. But guess what? You have oversight over a department. So when a new program or a developer comes into you, I want to try this program out. Guess what? You have that office down there. They have oversight. You have like Munisystem was one of the systems that came out through innovation. That office is ripe for greatness, and that's where I want to be a part of.
Thank you. Councilman Clark.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, Councilman, it's good to see you.
Nice to see you.
Thank you for expressing your interest in the position of Town and City Clerk.
Yes.
As previously stated to all the other candidates, my first question to you is, what qualifies you for the position of Town and City Clerk?
You know, it's an amazing thing because qualification has always been the thing. And I think we have to grow within, right? When we talk about cross-training, I talk to many of you guys about cross-training when I talk about town clerk. And I love that it came up on the situation because we build from down up. You know what? There's probably about 5 of us right now applying for town clerk. There should be 50 of us right now. Why? Because that office should be creating a system, an educational system, so that more people can do it. I'm only 33 years old right now. But guess what? I want 15 other people behind me that have the same qualifications for me, and no matter what age they can do it, they can take over that office, close their eyes, and run it. That is part of the qualification. The other part of the qualification, that's a councilman. We had a situation with the Register of Voters. We had to bring up charges. So we and Alan went down there and dig up all the policies and procedures, understanding, rewriting, cleaning up the things, understanding what is the true purpose of the town clerk's office. When we did charter revision, because what people don't understand, this qualification is this office is created for elected officials. We're the only major city in the state of Connecticut right now that appoints. New Haven, they elect. Bridgeport, they elect. Stanford, they elect. Waterbury, they elect. Some as short as 2 terms, some 4 years, some 6 years. So this office is meant for the people. This is for a person that has the energy and want to do the work with no qualifications, supposedly. But this system is created so that a person that comes out from wherever they are and they have interest and they have the passion and they have the drive that they want to do this position, they're able to do it. The problem is, if there's a young kid out there in the city of Hartford, he would have to go down to New Haven for his opportunity to be a town clerk, or he would have to go to Waterbury to get an opportunity to be a town clerk, or he would have to go to Stanford to do that. Why? Because the conversation of qualification won't be there. The people will decide if he is qualified to do it. And this situation is different. So why do I bring that up? As a councilman, we also had to do a charter revision. We looked at that issue. Why so many municipalities, over 100 municipalities are electing, and why are we doing it unappointed? We looked at the issue, we looked at the duties, and we decided eventually, with the recommendations, to leave it as is. But it's an open question still. Is there a possibility that this office becomes an elected position? I don't know, that's down the road, but we looked at that issue in hindsight. I work in real estate right now, so I spend a lot of time going down there. One of the biggest things that I had as a councilman is developers coming in to develop and having a hard time getting information from the records department. Guess what? One of the last 2 years, we were able to put our records, our land records, online. So if a developer's working with an architect in Texas, that architect can look up the history on this property. The problem now is, how do we create the linkage to you guys as council people? How do we create that linkage through the city residents, that they can click on a button and see the history when we're selling off city property, so we can find out what are the violations, why is it in our hands, why are we selling it, why are we doing X, Y, and Z? There is no such thing. And that's where I depended on as a councilman, going to Nick Carbone at Park Place. He had an arsenal of information. We don't have that here. And we have an LOB that do LOR reports. We don't have a council library.
Thank you. Councilman LeBron?
Okay, all right.
I know, I'm
Thank
sorry.
you. Thank you for coming, and thank you for...
I didn't get to ask you my second question, but that's okay.
All right.
I'll try to piggyback off it. Thank you for coming. Thank you for
You're
bringing a spirit and energy. So you mentioned that a Center for Innovation, and that is in, and you posed the example of instead of it being as a place for retirement.
Correct.
So can you tell me on a really high level, like, what is this innovation? What is your vision around innovation? And like maybe the top 3 examples of what you do differently?
We need to make it simple. It should be as simple as possible. I heard about legislation. I heard about whatever you want to hear about. It's creating lineage, creating examples. For example, there's an example here. Someone asks for a review from Corporation Counsel. Guess what happens to that? It disappears. It goes to the abyss. Guess what? There's another issue that comes about. Same issue again. Somebody made an opinion on it. Guess what? They're issuing another opinion. 2 opinions on the same issue. Guess what? Same issue comes about. 3 issues, same opinion. At the end, we need to make this easier. We're creating redundancies. We have to create synergy, right? Create linkage, right, between this information. Make it easier so people can follow the ordinance. So, for example, you don't understand the ordinance? Well, let's find out why Councilwoman President Molly Rosado introduced this legislation. What inspired her? What is the history? What is the background on that? The only way you can do it through now is through a cloud system where you can backtrack that. You can track it from her statements that she made here on council, from the debate that happened here on council, so that they can really understand before a lawyer gets to it and make it so understandable. It makes it, as an elected official, you have to make it very understandable. And I think they have to track it from the point that is introduced and explain from the debate that is done here. In another oversight area that I see here, the committee meetings. When you guys go out of committee, a lot of that information does not make it to the record. And that's really where it happens. I would love to see more information coming from the committee and being integrated into that, and also not televised. Hopefully there could be some grant writing that we can televise our committee meetings. the OMB committee meeting, the public safety committee. All those should be public so that people can engage. Everything should be easy and accessible. I can do that with my iPad. You go to major cities, they're doing it. So that is innovation. For us, for other cities, it's all old. We need to get to the point where we can actually say we are innovating. But in the meantime, we're catching up.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So I think the other questions will probably be a little bit longer. So I'm just going to ask just to bring some levity to this interview process. Does every dog in the city of Hartford have to be registered?
Yes.
How do you get that information to the community?
I think the capital city is the entertainment capital of Connecticut, right? We don't take advantage of all the people that come to this city. There should definitely be a booth at the Jazz Monday, on Jazz Mondays, where the dogs are there, where everybody's having a good time. Introduce them. Hey, listen, let's do it. Hook up with the veterinarians around Hartford County. Make sure there's something posted. Make sure that they're being reiterated. And also, that's a source of funds that we can use for we had to lay off not too long ago from the police department, the animal rescue personnel. We had to lay off people like that. We can potentially use some of that revenue to track that. Not only that, but have a history of where the animals are, especially with strayed animals.
Thank you.
Councilman Sanchez?
Evening, Councilman.
How you doing?
You brought some life here.
I tried. I'm trying.
So most of my questions have been answered, but I do have one or two.
Yep.
So as Mrs. Cruz mentioned earlier, we have 17 neighborhoods with over 62 culture and languages. So, we've been talking a lot about Spanish-speaking folks, but how about the other communities, Bosnian, Czechoslovakian? If appointed, what ideas or plans will you implement to communicate with the other communities?
We looked at this during the Register debacle. We've done this several times for election. Register of Voters was a big department that we dealt with, and a lot of it was the Albanian population, the Bosnian population that we've had in the community. They could not understand the ballots. So we looked at different systems. The court system has a 1-800 number that they use, and they have a translator that we can do that. We have different systems that are provided by the state and by CROG that we can create some synergy. Some smaller departments that don't have the staff would use that number. We use that too in the private sector as a number. We have a certified translator on the other side that is transcribed, right? That is provided to the city as to what happened, what was said in that conversation, and it becomes a tool so that we can learn as to what we can convey to those. And that comes into my constituent relationship management, CRM, right? How we are always creating and inventing. The aides on council, they spend probably 80% of the times dealing with constituent work. And a lot of people say, well, they don't work. Well, you know what? They were probably in a call for 2 hours about someone not picking up their mattress. We need to figure out how we manage our relationship with our constituents. We got to keep track of what we are doing with them, who has worked with them. If a councilman is in a meeting, in an NRZ meeting, and say, well, listen, my name is John Joe, and I've been dealing with this issue. A councilman should be able to pull up their ID, go into the CRM, and know who she spoke to or he spoke to, what they spoke about, when they spoke about it, and what was done about it, so that the councilman is not taken off guard. This happens all the time. It happened to me. And this is basic stuff. We're doing this in the business, in the private sector. Well, we know exactly what we did. I have a background in case management. When we were dealing with a client, we had to document things. And it's great because a lot of this stuff is automated. So you press a button, what time, when it did, what happened, who solved it, and it creates some synergy between the department. Because a lot of constituents will go to the Department of Public Works, they'll go to the town clerk's office, they go to the mayor's office, and eventually they all know it's like, wait, let's solve the issue here. Let's go to constituent services. You have to kind of let them know, listen, stop going around, we're gonna solve the issue, We already know you spoke to this person. You already know how we spoke to this person. How can I help you from this moment? And I think creating that CRM that the staff has access to will be instrumental to solving a lot of our relationship with our constituents.
I only have 30 seconds left here, so real quick, will you create, if appointed, do you have any thoughts about creating a welcome package which includes general ordinances, for example, picking up after your dog, that should be registered?
Listen, these campaigns, a lot of these campaigns are already there. So when you go to other municipalities, a lot of these campaigns are done. A lot of them come with grant funding, and I think that's where we have to focus. The city doesn't have the resources. We're going to have to find ways to grant fund, and I have that type of experience. I sat on many boards, as you can see in that resume, Hartford Food System, the Parents Academy. I've been able to sit into intricacies of these grant writing. They're challenging, but they need to be done because the taxpayers can't keep fitting the bill for all these extracurricular activities that we want to do.
Councilwoman Surgeon?
Good evening, Councilman. Nice
Good
to meet
evening.
you again. The state of Connecticut have a town clerk association. Our charter does not call for our town clerk to be a certified town clerk. As you stated before, in the state of Connecticut, some town clerks are appointed and some are elected, okay? But come with that is the certification where you can go throughout the entire state as a certified town clerk and get a job due to the association and their training. Would you commit, it's a 2-year program, should you be, should we hire you to get your certification?
Well, guess what? One of my first orders is make it mandatory. The state doesn't make it mandatory, but I believe that the council has the authority to make it mandatory for this office to have it. I think they not only do it statewide, but also do it nationally. Why? Because we need to understand that we are global, right? Ideas, problems that we're having here, people have solved them sometimes, and I think it's creating a community. Bringing people and innovating. If you want to innovate in that office, if you want to bring it to the next level, you need to work with others. So these trainings, you're going to start to network. You start building relationships, and that's how we should work. This is a very small, state. 3 million people. That's a borough in New York City. We should be working a lot more efficiently, and I think that training is, and actually that's the minimum training, right? There is a lot more that needs to be done. So those certification is the bare minimum. We need more.
Councilwoman Bermudez?
Good evening. Thank you so much for being here tonight. So I have one question. So you're obviously very charismatic, and from your personality and your time on council, you're the kind of person who, when you're not in the room, your absence is definitely seen and felt. And so, going on that frame of thought, you've had a hiatus, if you will, and so why do you want to, at this particular moment in time, come back into City Hall and do this work?
Well, I had, back in 2016, I had a very bad accident, and I spent some time in the rehab facility, and Mr. Mayor Luke Bronin came by several times to see me at the nursing home, and we were still talking about politics. I had just kind of wrapped up. I was part of the transition team, and this was a few months after, and I was still trying to carry out the work that we had done there because I was part of the transition team and financial and audit, and I still tried myself to stay involved as much as I can. Both of my kids were born here. Marauli's call that my wife was going to give birth came during a council meeting, and I have not left. I have not left here. I have not left. The problem is I am a person that I don't like credit. Right? So if I help you draft a legislation, if I help you write a resolution, if I do whatever research I want, I don't want credit. I want you guys to shine. My time is gone. As a councilman, is gone. That is your opportunity, is your time to shine. My duty is, as a constituent, as a person that has the ability or has been there, is to assist you and guide you. And that's it. And you guys do, or other officials in the city, they do what they want to do. But I'm not there to come here and demand things from them. I don't need it. I am satisfied. I'm a satisfied citizen. I bought my house here when I was 19 years old. And guess what? And I'll be here for a long time. But I try to be the best constituent I could be. And sometimes there's a lot of people that want to do this here inside City Hall. They want to be seen. They want to be in all the NRGs, but there's a lot of stuff that goes unnoticed. I've had focus on financial literacy, helping out people understand the importance of it. I've helped people work with community action, bring in prisoners back into the community, integrating them, work that nobody wants to do. Did it for 8 years. That just, I don't get the recognition. A lot of it you don't get because it's not something that people want to do. It's not glorified work. So I have not left because the real work is done out there in that community, right? Where you don't have people coming to public hearings and say, well, Raul just helped me with my credit. Raul helped me with getting a job. No, because that is something that I have to do as a citizen. You know why? Because a lot of people made it happen for me to even stand here, even to have the audacity to think that I can do this type of work. You know why? Because people believe in me. There was a peanut guy and there was a candy guy. At 9 years old, I was out there selling candy bars. At 11 years old, I was walking Parkville, washing windows, right? Bagging groceries, helping people at Save-A-Lot, helping the elderly that couldn't carry the bags into their cars. Always been involved in the community. At 14, working as a community researcher, helping with the needle exchange program, helping clear up all those brushes over there. That was called the cave over there on Park and Park Terrace. It was a cave where people would go in there and shoot up. Guess what? We gave them an alternative. And going out to blighted buildings, all that work is done. The problem is, a lot of those people, you may not even get to know. You know why? Because they're busy out there working. So for me, there hasn't been a hiatus. I'm sorry I'm not that visible here because I think there's more people out there that need me. Not that you guys are not important, but you can call me and we can talk.
Councilman Mictum.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. De Jesus.
Good evening.
I'm going to ask you the question I've been asking everybody. The council meetings and the operation of city government are opaque. Generally speaking, the videos are online, they're hard to find, there's no transcripts, there's no translation. And generally speaking, I mean, you talked a little bit about televising more things, but what steps broadly can we take to make all of this known and accessible to everyone, despite whatever impediments of language or disability or resources they have?
We need to meet the people where they are. Right? One of the biggest things they say is know your audience. Where is your audience? Where are people reaching out to you, right? Where are people looking for you, right? We have data that comes in through our website, right? Are we using that data? Are we putting that into CRM? What pages on that website are being clicked? What are the questions that people are leaving? What website or what part of that website are they clicking out, right? Come in, sit down with that staff in the first 30 days. Understand, be bold. Let's build and let's boost these employees. A lot of people know this information, but because there's probably not a space where they can just think out loud and say, listen, this person has been coming here for the same information, does not know that they can get this information on their own. They can't make it here because they had to come here in a city bus, not understanding that they can go to the local library and probably have that printed. So it's understanding who your audience is, collecting as much information that comes in, and based on that, you serve the constituent. You have to be able to create the synergy, create the data, because we have tons of information. The question is, how do we dilute it, and how do we make it accessible to the people? And that's, I think, where we have the crossroad, right? How do we make that happen? And that is the body that's here and the people that are behind us. They know the answers. They know the answers. The question is, there's no place where they can take their ideas and be taken serious. Some people don't want to innovate. Oh, no, I brought this idea 15 times. Well, guess what? Come in for the 16th time. Let's try it. Again, going back to grant funding. We need to find ways to do all this with very little money.
Well, let me ask you to be more specific. I mean, Yes, definitely. We need to innovate. Agreed. What are some, just a few ideas, main ideas, if we're talking about making sure that people throughout the city of Hartford know what services are available to them and how to get them, whether it's online, whether it's coming here, whether it's at the library? What are just top 3 ways you think that the clerk's office could implement new things that would make that access to information work better?
Well, the town clerk is limited, so we're going to have to team up with the executive branch that does a lot of the communication for the city. So I don't want to overstep those boundaries, but creating that synergy, that bonds. For example, if we are communicating a new ordinance, right? One of the biggest problems that we have in the city is ordinance enforcement, right? The problem there is, there's so many ordinances, right, that you can't keep track of them. But we need to start going to the source, right? If it's a bodega ordinance, make sure that bodega owner knows. Go to those agencies that they go to the banks that they go to. We have all this information. Many of them, we need to meet them where they are. We got to know where they are. But the problem is, we are not documenting. We're not following up. And so when we have a list of public hearings, who's calling up all those people with public hearings that come in to speak on that ordinance? Have those people who propone it, they are ambassadors. Give them the ambassadorship. Make sure, listen, you came here for the public hearing 16 times. You go ahead and bring that over to your community and come back and report and see how we can enforce that better.
Thank you.
Yep.
Councilman Gale?
Thank you, and good evening.
How you doing?
Good evening, Councilman DeJesus. So you mentioned grant funding a couple of times in answers to a couple of questions. So I want you to speak a little bit about your experience in actually obtaining a grant. Tell us your most successful grant. But at the same time, I also want you to speak about your management experience. I know that you've sat up here, and sitting up here, you've seen budgets come before you. But that's really very different being on this side of it and being on the department side and having to develop the budget. So if you would, tell us what your experience has been in developing a budget, in managing people, and in grant writing.
So let me tell you something. A success is getting $1 from anyone in this industry for grant funding. Right now, grant funding has decreased. With the new tax legislation that has come in from this administration and the federal level, people are giving less. Nonprofits are having to do more. We have to do grant-based funding in a way that we've never done it before. They're looking for metrics. They want to make sure that everything is met. When we were in the Hartford food system, we had a tremendous program about getting fresh fruits into the bodegas, making sure that the kids had access to good and healthy food, making sure that the shelves, the first thing that a 5-year-old can see is something healthy, most likely a water bottle, or that the fruits were at eye level so that they can buy it. Make it so that they can do it. Guess what? It was tough to do it. But guess what? We had to get creative. We had to get families, stories in those grant writings. People want to see people. When people are funding, you got to put a face to who is that going to be affected. That's using technology. That's creating campaign. That's using those families to go ahead and call those agencies, to lobby them. That's understanding, bringing them. Sometimes those grant funders are willing to come to the community and look at the issue that is in hand, bringing them along and showing them this is the problem that we have. This is the problem that you're going to help save. So for me, if you can get $1 in this industry of grant writing, guess what? That's an accomplishment. But we need to innovate. Money is just not pouring in anymore. You know, the block grant, that is dwindling. The city, each council member, right? Each council member had $30,000 when we first came into office to put out into the city. Guess what I said? We don't want it. Put that money back into essential, necessities for the city. When we talk about management, you have to set the example. When it comes to management, I work for Berkshire Hathaway now. And when I did this, when I was in the board, when we were hiring a new director, when we were managing statewide agency at the Community Partners in Action, arranging locations to accept prisoners, arranging locations to do that, managing all those logistical things I've done. And it comes from all different levels, but we need to figure out how we want to do this in a very efficient way and in a way that we can all do it. Management now is no longer making sure everybody's going by the policy or the books or creating more redundancies. It's about listening to the people. Why? Because people have options. Why is there the turnover? Because that probably person does not see no hope in that office. What am I supposed to do as a leader, as a manager, is create hope for that person. And guess what? Create opportunities for that person so we can retain them in this city. Management comes within, and management comes with inspiring, creating, and innovating. Those people have to be a part of it. We have to make sure we listen to our employees. We need to manage differently. What we learn in college, what people learned 20 years ago, that form of government, that form of management has changed. We need to innovate. We need to inspire. And guess what? They're one of us. We are a team. And that's important. Making sure that you are a good team leader and working with others.
Thank you. What would be your 3 first priorities if elected town clerk in your first 30 days?
You know,
And if you could keep it to 2 minutes, because I plan on yielding my other 2 minutes to Councilman Clark, because he still had a question for you.
sounds good. So, very basic. We have to sit down with the staff. We need to figure out how this operation has been going and where do they feel are the missing parts to take it to the next level. They possess this information. We need to cross-train them. We need to cross-train people. We need to make sure that if we're here in counting absentee ballots and they see me doing something I'm not supposed to be doing because we are a team, they're able to say, Raul, perdóname, but you are doing it wrong. Guess what? And I should say, you know what? Thank you for helping me out. You know why? Because when they talk about the town clerk's office, they talk about everyone in that office. So cross-training is important. Access and evaluate what the situation is going on. What is going on? What has been being done for that time? And how do I come into the picture with an open ear and find my way into it without creating any damage to what has already been constructed? So build on what's there. Not to recreate and throw everything away like a lot of people do. It's how you build on that. And the most important thing is the CRM. What is the services that we're doing? Every year we should be reevaluating what we're doing. Who is walking into our doors? Why are they walking into our doors? What times are they coming into our door? You said an example of a lunch schedule. Well, guess what? We know that from 11 to 1, we have the most amount of constituents coming into the building. So guys, please, if it's possible, can you please take your lunch break after 1 o'clock? But we need to figure out what are we servicing and what we're going to do it. This year, we need to find out what our priorities are. All right.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, Councilman, thank you for answers to the questions. But just briefly, if you were to be appointed the next town and city clerk for the city of Hartford, what would you do to bring the office of town and city clerk into the community?
Listen, you don't have to bring the office to the community. The community is already here. They need to be a part of that office, right? How you do that is by getting those interns in there, just like me, that are ripe, that have a lot of energy, that have the opportunity, bring them there, have them be the ambassadors. Not only that, but guess what? Do with the dog licensings, go out to the community. Have a face in the community for the town clerk's office. Let them know that you just don't come here just for your vital statistics, that we just don't come here for land records. It's creating a system in which people feel welcome and they say, you know what? I want to talk to that guy that I met. I don't know what he was talking about, but he said the town clerk's office. We want to make this place as inviting as we can, and we want to make it a destination. And the destination is, we're going to get answers here. This guy is the record keeper. This guy's going to give me the answers that I want. And that's going into the Yard Goat Stadium. That is going to the NRC. At least, you should be attending at least one NRC from every community at least one time a year, making your voices heard, understanding what the constituents are wanting. What do they want to see in a town clerk? You know, we need to think outside the box. You know, I come from a religious background, and religiously, people are not going to churches. So guess what? Everybody's inside of a church. Now what we got to do? We got to evangelize. We got to get out those four walls. And that's exactly what we need to do in that office. We need to go out there and tell them there's a beautiful building at City Hall. It took me I was 16 years old, the first time I set foot into this building. How many kids pass by this building and they don't know that they can do, or they're a part of this building, and that they could be someone in this building too.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. And last but not least, Mr. Eric Lusa.
Good evening, City Council.
Good evening.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you, distinguished council members. Thank you for this opportunity to come before this body. I know it's getting a little late, so I'll be sure to keep my answers underneath the 4-minute window. That being said, I'm humbled and honored to be here before you today to be in consideration to be the next town clerk of this great city of Hartford. I've been a Hartford resident for over 15 years, owning a condo and investing in our city's future. Over my last 10 years in the town clerk's office, we have worked tirelessly to professionalize and streamline services for the residents and the taxpayers of the city. We're trying to do all this work on a nonpartisan basis and to promote transparency. Over 10 years ago, I started my career in the clerk's office at the most basic entry-level position, a 90-day temp. With time and hard work, I'm able to stand before you today. To date, I've completed half of the required course load to become a certified clerk, and look to complete these processes over the coming year. I'm quickly going to go into what it is we do in the town clerk's office, just to clarify some things and some misconceptions that might have been laid out to this body. There are 4 main silos of responsibility that this office controls. The first is the core office. In our core office, we take in about $5 million a year. About half of that money gets sent to the state of Connecticut. The rest goes into our general funds. Most of these funds come from property transfers, land records, deeds, mortgages, quick claims, warranty deeds, any licenses, dog hunting, fishing, e-recordings. You see an uptick in e-recordings that are being sent into the office, which is helpful when you're short-staffed. Currently, we have 5 employees in this office. In 2006, we had 16 employees. Now, what is the cause of this attrition? As you know, the city of Hartford has gone through some financially tough times. With union packages being altered and with layoffs, we have been whittled down to 5 people. That being said, we have no choice to cross-train these individuals. So I'm fortunate that my team is willing to cross-train because that could bring up union issues, and everybody seems to be on board in that sense. There are the other silo of responsibilities that is incorporated in the office is the Vital Records Office. We have 5 other employees over there as well. They deal with your death, your marriage, and your birth certificates. With 2 hospitals in the city, they have an extremely high service rate to the taxpayers. We are issuing 150 licenses on a busy day. There are 3 notaries in this office. So if somebody does need a notary for the town clerk's office, they would go to this office. The third silo, which you're all familiar with, is working with the city council, being your managerial backbone, your day-to-day paper pushers, if I can say that. We put together the council agendas, minutes, certified resolutions, track your items in committee if need be. All legal ads and legal notices are done through our office for any sale of city property. All ordinances have to be legally noticed. All this stuff is super time sensitive, or it makes an item illegal, and it makes the council look bad. We do not want the council to look bad. The 4th division of responsibility is our election division. This year we have 4 elections, or primaries for that matter. Just to give you an example of what we're going to be dealing with this calendar year, we have a federal election in November. We're looking at 3,000 ballots going out the door and 2,700 ballots coming in. That is an all-hands-on-deck approach. You mess up one ballot, you're in the paper. So I've had the fortunate ability to work on about 20 elections, never had any issues, and we continue to strive for that. Just quickly to touch on some of the things that were brought to this body's attention. I'm going to start with the website. The website's going over a major transformation, modernization. Some of your staff members have been in these meetings. I have been in some of these meetings. I have a meeting tomorrow. This website will be ADA compliant. We are working with every other department within the city of Hartford to clarify and streamline the website, so the taxpayers and the residents can find these items. Some of our functions in the town clerk's office, if it's a damage claim form for a pothole or something, those will be able to be submitted online. That way the person or the resident doesn't have to come in the office and fill out this paperwork. Stuff like that is being looked at. The other thing I did want to mention was that currently we are part of 3 professional associations at a local, state, and national level. Conferences are attended by me and my staff to always find the best practices that have been adopted or look to be adopted. At this time, I will kick it back to council and answer any questions you guys have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Clark?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lusa, for...
Councilman Clark, good to see you.
Good to see you. Thank you for expressing your interest in the town and city clerk's position. As previously stated to all the candidates, I think you've already alluded to some answers to my questions that I'm getting ready to pose to you, but can you just tell us what qualifies you for the position of town and city clerk?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think since day one when I became a 90-day temp and, I learned under the tutelage of John Bizzano and other excellent staff members, Kelly Billadou, that was, part of the team, and I learned from some of the best. And I think that's what qualifies me to, for this job currently.
Thank you. And the second question, follow-up to that, as you know, and you've been around a while, you see that the community does not know a lot about functionalities of city departments. They often get confused as to what departments they need to go to. So what would you do if you were appointed as the next town and city clerk to bring the office into the community?
Sure. I think first and foremost, I think the town clerk's office for the city should have an official Facebook page, and we could push out as much information, if it's that committee stuff, agendas, ordinances, maybe elections, absentee ballots, stuff of that nature, just to touch that medium. Currently, there is no official town clerk's page for the city of Hartford. I would hope to do some kind of social media presence to try to get it out there. More or less, everybody has a Facebook page, so that's one of the ideas. The second idea was a former councilman, which I'm not going to give his name. He put me on to a software program. For about $100, you can transcribe every word that is said on this dais, and that can get generated to the public in a very timely manner. I think as a body, that's something you guys could decide on to try to maximize transparency and to help the public.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Councilman LeBron?
So Eric, sitting here, sounds like you were taking some of my questions down and answering, so thank you for that.
No problem.
Kind of a cheat sheet. So, yeah. Okay, so you have the interim role now, correct, or the interim label now,
Correct.
right? So, number one, tell me how that's handcuffing you right now, and number two, if you were to get the town clerk position, like what would you do differently without that interim role?
Sure. I think the interim title, just from a internal aspect, it kind of gives the office a sense of uneasiness. We don't know who's going to be coming through that door, who's not coming through that door. Is this person going to have some political baggage per se? So I think just you want to get this process over as soon as possible, just to have some cohesion within the office, to make sure that the civil servants that are there every day, busting their hump, short-staffed, with pensions cut, with benefits cut, that they have some cohesion in their day-to-day lives.
All right, thank you for the brevity. So can you provide an example of where your ethics were tested?
I think every day, if it was yesterday during the absentee ballot process when we're counting the ballots, or if it's, any of the $5 million coming across that counter, every day we strive to keep the office in a professional setting and to just maximize, the best bang for the buck for the constituents here. You know, we are civil servants, and we look to use this as a civil service role.
All right, I'll pass on to Councilman Sanchez.
Councilman Sanchez.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Evening, Eric.
Evening, Councilman.
Just two questions. First one, do you have any grant writing experience?
I do, Councilman. Every year, the clerk's office applies for a $10,000 grant to the state library. Currently, these funds are being used to take some of our older archival land records, Mylars, deeds, over to the Hartford Center, which is next door at the Hartford Library. So that is an ongoing process. Last year was one of the first years we hit the maximum fundage from the state library. We're currently in the process of writing this grant for this coming up year. I believe it's due in April, so we have to get our language tied up for April to try to get that $10,000 for next fiscal year.
Okay. And then my next question is, so you've been the interim city clerk for a few months now, right? Correct. And you know, with this experience plus your experience there prior to being the interim, what are your thoughts as far as, you know, goals for the, if appointed, for the first 30 days?
Sure. I think in the first 30 days is we are going to try to fill some of these vacancies we have in the office. Moving forward on these vacancies will help us, you know, weather the storm on these upcoming elections. There's a major election in April, presidential preference for the Democratic and Republican Party. So I think over the first 30 days is to get the ability to talk to the HR department, you know, as an official department head to move this ball forward in a timely manner. Thank you.
Councilwoman Surgeon.
Great. Good evening, Eric.
Councilwoman Surgeon, good evening.
The City of Hartford, my same question has always been that the town clerk doesn't have to be a certified town clerk. We have a town clerk association, Chirag, Connecticut, and you are an assistant town clerk, along with your interim title.
Yes, ma'am.
You said in your opening remarks that you have, what,
I have 3 of 5 modules required to get the full certification.
I'm sorry?
I have 3 of 5 modules to get the full certification.
So you've been through all the 5 modules?
Oh, 3 of 5.
3 of 5.
3
I'm
of
so
5,
sorry.
yes. Yes,
okay.
yes.
And when did you start that?
I started it probably about 3 years ago, and we hope to complete that process within the next year or so, depending on the availability and what classes that are left.
Okay. All right. So you've been in the office for about 10 years, I think?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. And the modules it's about a 2-year program?
Yeah, if you can time it right, it's about a 2-year program, correct?
Okay. So you haven't, over the last 5, 6, 7 years, wanted to become a certified town clerk?
It is not a requirement by charter, as you've said.
Exactly.
Yeah, and, you know, knock on wood, you know, the last few town clerks have not been certified. But, you know, knowing that that's a concern of this body, I have no problem completing that process.
Right. Because one of the good things about being part of the association is the technology, the new information that comes down through legislation. So it is an asset to the town clerk to be certified or be part of the association because you share ideas and it's a great opportunity for you to learn or even network with your other peers.
Yeah, we do attend, me or some of my staff attend each conference, if it's locally or regionally. We don't do the national stuff. So we still get the ideas. The actual training classes is a little different cup of tea. But yeah, we are part of the 3 associations that most towns and cities are. Thank you so much.
Councilwoman Bermudez.
Thank you. Good evening. So we got a chance to listen to 3 other candidates, and one of the things that resonated over and over again with the 3 separate candidates was for the town clerk's office to have more innovation, creativity, energy. And so under your leadership, being potentially appointed as town clerk, how would you bring that in as well?
Sure, I think it's a few things. I think on the land and record side of things, you know, we do a lot of deeds, mortgages, property transfers. We're trying to push a lot of that stuff to the e-recording phase. funds get transferred automatically, stuff gets digitized automatically. So we have led that process statewide, so that is something that we have already done. I think from the communication aspect, I think, like I said earlier, I think, some kind of social media presence to alert the community, maybe with some meetings, maybe some committee meetings. I think that's some of the core things that we can do. We can't change too much. Everything is dictated by state statute. For the most part, fees are dictated by state statute, processes are dictated by state statute. So our hands are tied at that level. So significant changes would have to come from the legislator. We are still required by state law to, build books. After X amount of documents, we have to have a physical book in our archives, even though everything is digitized. We are one of 2 states that still requires physical books to be made. And that is a problem because Hartford has a lot of land records. So we're building books almost on a daily basis.
And as a follow-up to that, since you indicated that there's a lot that's dictated by state statute.
Correct.
Why haven't, just out of curiosity, the low-hanging fruit, for instance, the website, being revamped, it's now been 4 years. Why hasn't the low-hanging fruit already been done?
Yeah, so from a legal standpoint, the website is up to date. All the council minutes, meetings, agendas are up there. It might not be the most aesthetically pleasing site, so I think that is what the administration is looking at across all the department functions. So from a legal standpoint, everything is up there. I think council has taken more of an active role as far as the committees go. I think you guys upload your own committee stuff, which is a big burden off our plate. We would love to do that for you guys as well, but it's just with our current staffing levels, that is just something that's untenable at this point with all the committees. We are willing to sit down in this body at a later date and see if there's something more specific we could do. But yeah, all suggestions are open.
I only have 1 minute left. The last question. So you said you are going to be completing the final modules so that you can become a certified town clerk.
Correct.
And you also mentioned that the last town clerks have not been certified?
Correct, yes.
Did I hear you correctly?
Correct. Yep.
Even while they were serving?
Correct, yep. John Bazzano and Dan Carey were not certified town clerks. While serving, at any capacity, yep. They were not certified.
They were not?
Through the state of Connecticut system, no, they were not.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Mictum?
Thank you. Good evening, Eric.
Councilman, good evening.
You already addressed part of the question I've been asking everyone. Sure. You were, I think, alluding to former Councilman Cotto's tweet about the city of Cambridge, Mass. that
well
has software to transcribe videos. But I think it's a broader question, right? I mean, these meetings are not accessible to people who speak Spanish, let alone the other languages that are spoken that aren't as common, Portuguese, Bosnian, any number of other things. The videos, when they're uploaded, are not easy to find in the first place, search in the second instance, and speaking more broadly, the things the city does are not easy to know about, generally speaking. And I say that not just the website, but folks on the street I don't think even know where to begin. So what can the town clerk's office do to broaden that reach?
Yeah, I think it's a multi-pronged approach. I think, working with this body in our office, if it's maybe, starting a Facebook page for both offices or maybe embedding these videos, in a more user-friendly manner on our pages, we would have to do a deeper dive to find out what are some of the best practices done in other municipalities. I think that's probably the best way to do this. It seems to be a common theme that we're hearing from you guys and from the community. So, we will have to do, an old-fashioned case study and see what are some of the best practices out there. So that's more or less sums that up.
Thank you. You talked a lot about working on elections and counting ballots, and this is actually a question that came to me from a constituent. Every time we have an election, I would say in the city, there's some hue and cry gets raised about whether some funny business is happening with some of the absentee ballots that come in. And my question to you is, what could the clerk's office do, working with the registrar, to assure the public that everything is kosher and to ensure the integrity of the elections?
Yeah, great question. You know, every time an absentee ballot application is filled out, that is in sense an affidavit. There are some consequences if there's some false information placed on that affidavit. That being said, there's also no absentee ballot police, for that matter. Everything we do internally is all geared towards state statute. You know, there is always a cry across the major cities that this process is broken. I think the legislator has taken a look at it with regards to early voting. I think that is the answer. I think you allow early voting. Now, this body cannot approve that, obviously, but I think the Hartford delegation can. I think that is the best way to try to alleviate the changes that need to be done. The process does need to be changed. We cannot change the process. This body cannot change that process, but I think early voting is the best way to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and good evening, Ms. Peluso.
Good evening.
So, prior to you speaking with us this evening, we've had three other people. Assuming one of those other three people is appointed the town clerk, first, tell us if you would expect to stay on in your current position, and then second, tell us how you would work with how you see yourself working with a new town clerk who's not you.
Yeah, great question. I think at this stage of the game, that's kind of a moving target, but I would give guarantee to this body that, you know, I would help that transition as smoothly as possible. I love the city, you know, I don't want to see the city fail. I don't want to see something blow up and make council look bad. So, you know, I would do what I could during the transition period to help, you know. Is there a possibility I could leave eventually? Sure, there is. And I just, you know, I can't see into the future, so, but, you know, we'll do our part where we can.
And second question, the land records, probably a lot of people don't know this, but the land records are a steel vault. And you know that, right?
Technically speaking, yes.
And within that steel vault, we actually have a vault that goes down into the basement pretty deeply.
We do, sir.
So my question is whether you have actually walked down to the very bottom of that vault, and if so, tell us all what lies beneath the bowels of City Hall here.
Sure, so it's about 3 stories down. It's quite spooky, it's terrible air quality, and it's hot, but me and Councilwoman Bermuda has worked on a few projects in her former years, and I have some of the green team banners and the e-waste recycling banners down there for safekeeping. So if you ever want to do that again, we could do that. So it's basically storage, and that's what our archivist does. That's where that grant for the $10,000 comes from. So they are literally going book by book, floor by floor, taking out anything of value, anything that's important, and moving it to the Hartford Historical Center over at the library. So the public has more of an access to it, and ultimately the stuff will be digitized and keyword searchable on a computer. So that's what that is.
Well, I want a tour at some point.
Easy.
Hello, Mr. Luso.
Council President, how are you?
I'm good. For clarification purposes for our viewers and the people that are here in the audience, how long have you been working at the city clerk's office?
Sure. So my, not counting my internship there, my first official day as a full-time employee was February 1st of 2010.
2010. And John Bazzano left when?
January 10th of this year.
And would you say that you've been doing a good job as acting town clerk since?
I would say with support of my team, which is many members, that we have hit the ground running, and it's been a relatively smooth transition considering all the obstacles. So yes.
Okay, and in 2016, how many were employed at the city clerk's office?
In 2006, there was 16. In 2016, there probably was ballparking at 8 or 9.
And could you tell this body why should you be considered to be our next town clerk?
I think ultimately, if this body does confirm me, I think that I am the most qualified individual to make sure that this office is ran in a professional, transparent manner. Also, might I add, in a nonpartisan manner. I think the taxpayers deserve it, and I think our residents deserve it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I still have 2 minutes on the clock. Does anyone else have a question? Yes, you may.
John, I have taken that tour. I did it when I was way younger. At my age, I wouldn't go all the way down the bottom. Believe me, and you want to wear maybe like a sweat. No, I'm not coming with you. And you might as well wear a t-shirt because it is whoa hot down there.
Councilman
So,
LeBron?
I apologize to everyone here. Just one more as I was listening. And thank you, Madam Chair, for your 2 minutes. So we spoke, you spoke of in 2006, there were 16 staff members, and now there's currently 5.
Correct.
There's been a constant theme or a woven theme amongst everyone that's been talking and everything for innovation. How do you juxtapose not having staff, managing innovation, and having people with real bandwidth issues?
What is the question?
So basically,
Yeah.
there's a hard job.
Yeah.
People already have roles.
Yep.
Right? They're stretched thin.
For sure, yep.
5 staff. You got this need for innovation, so that's currently work that doesn't exist on their plate now.
Yep.
How do you make that happen?
It's hard, and I think the first step is, got to hire some people in these vacant positions. I think, if confirmed, one of my first acts will be to hire some bilingual native Spanish speakers to make sure that we can serve the public's right. Once we get our staffing levels appropriately and fiscally sound, I think we can take on other issues and try to fix other problems that this body has addressed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Lusa. I want to thank the public and our viewers for spending this time with us and going through this process with us. And this concludes our COW meeting for this evening. Meeting adjourned.